You might say I had it all lined out for me, since I was born into a world where my last name opens more doors than I want to enter. My father is the head of a firm that you have most likely seen tick over and over on the stock exchange screen more times than you have cursed the alarm clock. That type of affluent indeed. It's not the narrative you're looking for, though, if you're picturing a golden girl wearing fine clothes and having champagne for breakfast. Me, with my feet planted firmly on the ground, I've always been honest. Although it's good, money isn't everything. I choose a different route, one that has brought me to experiences and places that money cannot purchase, and that a gold card cannot purchase. Volunteering, giving to the less fortunate, and leading an average life. That's me, just Jessica, not the Aries. My buddy Sarah decided that we all needed to go out more, and I found myself stranded in one of those ordinary evenings. We ended up in a hole downtown where the lights are dim enough to conceal your regrets, and the beer is cheap. Sarah was talking endlessly about a guy she met online. Jess, you must meet him. He's exactly your type, she insisted. My kind. When did she come to the conclusion that she was my type? In any case, once we arrive, this guy, Alex, not Sarah's internet prince, arrives. He appeared as out of place as a cat at a dog show while he was there with some buddies. He was wearing jeans, a basic t-shirt, and this effortless smile that seemed to light up the room, but he wasn't dressed to impress. When we started communicating, it was extremely simple. He had a management position at a company I had never heard of. It was nothing special, yet he spoke about it with an enthusiasm that was almost contagious. You really dig your job, huh? I recall asking while enjoying my third beer. Absolutely. Alex leaned forward and fired back. Though I'm not here to boring you with work-related chatter, every day presents a challenge. How about you? Sarah brought up charitable work. I tried to minimize it by shrugging. Yes, a little bit of both. You know, I'm just trying to do my part. When he said, "That's cool, really cool," I could see he meant it. Not in an attempt to impress you, but in a sincere manner. As the evening went on, our group mixed, but Alex and I stayed together and spoke about everything and nothing. Speaking with someone who wasn't attempting to pitch me on an investment or boast about their most recent purchase was refreshing. Alex had this gleam in his eye as the evening was coming to an end, as if he was preparing for something. I realize this is a bit too direct, but would you want to go out to dinner with me someday, Jessica? Only us. I recall experiencing a mixture of joy and astonishment. Sure, I said, attempting to seem cool. I'd like that. While driving home, Sarah couldn't stop laughing and said, "I told you so." I simply grinned as I considered the night. Alex was a welcome change in my frequently monotonous surroundings. I had no idea how drastically things were about to shift. Soon, going out evolved into spending time at each other's homes, which, let's face it, was mostly my comfortable flat due to Alex's roommate's antics. After eating what may have been the most unimpressive takeout pizza ever, Alex turned to face me one evening while splayed out on the couch. His tone was lighthearted, but his eyes were serious. He said, crumbs still hanging from the corner of his mouth, "Jessica, how do you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement?" I arched an eyebrow. You proposing we split a Netflix account or something? More along the lines of he laughed, wiping the crumbs from his face, a life together. Let's start with Netflix, though. The directness and simplicity of it, just us in our environment, with no ostentatious gestures or theatrical backgrounds. It felt natural. Alex, if that's what you're asking, then sure. Yes, 1,000 times over. Suddenly, with the smell of cheap pizza as our witness, we made the decision to be married. Yes, everything happened quickly, but when you know, you know. The next challenge was telling our relatives. Although my parents have always advocated for the as long as you're happy philosophy, this was really testing it. Mom, the socialite, and Dad, with his business empire, had dreams of my being married to someone closer to our social circle. During a gourmet meal where you're unsure about which fork to use for the salad, I broke the news. I blurted out, "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married to Alex," as quickly as I could. Dad stopped, forking in the air. "Alex, the guy who manages." "That's quick, then." Mom just grinned a little too much. "Are you certain, dear? This is very abrupt, isn't it?" I was firm, though. "Yes, without a doubt. We're truly content together, and he's incredible." Their affection was evident, but so did their cynicism. Mom said, "Well, if he makes you happy, darling," and Dad agreed with a nod. Alex's parents were quite different. We visited their home, a small, comfortable house that always appeared to smell like freshly baked cookies or something similar. As grounded as they come, Judy and Martin embraced me as though I had always been a member of the family. "Alex tells us you're setting a date," Martin asked, passing me a plate of those infamous cookies. "Yes, we're thinking sooner rather than later." "Small ceremony, nothing fancy," I replied, trying to gauge their reaction. Judy beamed. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're just thrilled for you both." Their warmth was enveloping, a stark contrast to the cautious optimism of my own parents. It was clear right from the get-go that our worlds were different, but the common ground was the genuine happiness for me and Alex. Planning the wedding, we were on the same page. Keep it simple. Keep it us. A small ceremony, close friends and family, and an open bar, because, as Alex put it, if we're doing this, we're making sure everyone's having a good time. And that's how it went down, a swift engagement. Not because we were rushing, but because everything just clicked into place. Amid the whirlwind, there were quiet moments, looks shared between us that said, "We're doing the right thing." And we really were. Living with Alex started off as everything I'd hoped for and more. We were like two peas in a pod, making our little corner of the world in that cozy, modern apartment I had rented. It was ours, filled with love, laughter, and a ton of takeout containers. Because let's face it, neither of us were winning any awards in the kitchen. It wasn't long before I started noticing how Alexa's parents, Judy and Martin, had this way of dropping hints about things they liked or needed whenever they came over. At first, it was subtle, almost cute. "Oh, Jessica, that's a lovely coffee maker. Must make mornings a breeze," Judy would say, eyeing our shiny new appliance with a gleam in her eye. Or, "Martin, this sofa is just divine. Our old one's been giving me a right pain in the back," he would say. Wanting to be the good daughter-in-law, I'd surprise them with gifts here and there. A coffee maker for Judy, a comfortable new sofa for their living room, and so on. Their initial reactions were always the same, a mix of surprise and a little bit of guilt. "Oh, Jessica, you shouldn't have. This is too much," Judy would exclaim, her hands fluttering to her chest. "But you know, humans are funny creatures. Give them an inch, and they'll take a mile." Those initial protests faded away, replaced by a growing list of subtle hints that were about as subtle as a brick through a window. "Dinner at your folks' place was lovely, dear. Did you see that new TV they have? Crystal clear." "Ours is practically ancient," Alex would relay, oblivious to the change in their tone. One evening, after I just dropped a not-so-small fortune on a fancy new TV for them, Alex and I were curled up on the couch, my head resting in his lap. "They really love the TV, babe. You're amazing, you know that," he said, his fingers running through my hair. I sighed, the weight of their expectations starting to press down on me. Alex, do they expect us to keep doing this? It's getting a bit much, don't you think? He paused, his hand stopping mid-stroke. What do you mean? They're just happy, that's all. Happy or taking advantage? I pushed back, sitting up to look at him. It feels like we're their personal shopping service. Alex was taken aback, his brow furrowing. They're not like that, Jess. They're just not used to nice things, that's all. But where does it end, Alex? It's like they've got a taste for it now, and they're not looking back. I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. The conversation ended with an uneasy truce, but it was clear we were on different pages. Judy and Martin's gratitude had morphed into entitlement, and it was putting a strain on me. I loved Alex, but I wasn't about to become a bottomless ATM for his parents. When my dad's company hit the skids, it felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. That cushy life, poof, gone. And with it, the whole dynamic of my relationship took a nosedive. The shift wasn't gradual. It was like flipping a switch from daylight to darkness. I had to break the news to Alex and his folks, and let me tell you, that was a conversation I'd been dreading. Listen up, things are going to get tight. Dad's company's tanking, and well, we're in for a rough ride. I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the tremor was there, betraying my nerves. Alex's reaction was a gut punch. You're kidding me, right? What do you mean things are going to get tight? You're telling me we can't live like we used to because of your dad's mess. His words were like ice, and for a second, I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Judy and Martin's faces were no better, their disappointment barely masked. This is quite the situation you put us in, Jessica, Martin added, his tone dripping with reproach. Just like that, the warmth and camaraderie we once shared evaporated, replaced by this cold expectation that somehow I was to blame for my family's financial downturn. Moving in with them was held up as a temporary solution. Our once independent life got swapped for a guest room that felt more like a cell in the house of two people who clearly saw us as a nuisance. The atmosphere was charged with tension, every day a reminder that I'd somehow failed them. We're cutting back on everything because of this, Judy would remind me, her voice sharp as she served dinner that was a far cry from the lavish meals we used to enjoy. And Martin, always with a comment on saving costs, would say, make sure those lights are off. We're not running a charity here. But Alex, he was the hardest to bear. The man I married seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who saw me as a letdown. Can't you do something? Talk to your dad. It's like you don't even care we're living like this. He'd snap, anger flaring over the smallest things. Our conversations, once easy and filled with future plans, now felt like minefields. Every word I said was a potential trigger for another outburst. I thought marrying you meant security, not this. This struggle, he'd throw at me during arguments, his words slicing through me. It was clear we weren't just dealing with financial stress. This was a test of our relationship, a revelation of true colors under pressure. I was stuck in the middle, battling the disillusionment from my husband and his parents, while grappling with my own sense of failure. Judy's birthday dinner was supposed to be this cozy family thing at some upscale restaurant, a break from the constant tension. But it turned into the showdown of a lifetime. I should have seen it coming, the way things had been going at their place. We were all sitting there, menu in hand, and I was trying to keep the peace, just blend into the background. That plan got torpedoed the second orders started flying. Alex, with this grin that made my skin crawl, goes, let's get the steak and the lobster for us. And he throws a look my way. 1 part smug, 2 parts cruel. Jessica can do with the soup of the day. Gotta save where we can, right? They all laughed like it was the best joke they'd heard in ages. Judy added her 2 cents. Absolutely. Can't have Jessica overspending now, can we? I felt this flush of heat, not embarrassment, but pure fury. Really? Soup? What's this? Some kind of sick joke? I snapped back, my voice sharper than I intended. Oh, come on, Jessica. It's just a bit of fun. Alex said, that smirk still plastered on his face. That's when I lost it. Fun. This is your idea of fun. When the chips are down, you just show how petty you really are. I can't believe I fell for your act. You could hear a pin drop. The whole restaurant was watching now. The awkwardness palpable. I didn't sit back down. Keep your fancy dishes and your pathetic jokes. I'm out, I said, standing up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. The noise echoed, turning more heads our way. Alex reached out, trying to play the peacemaker. Jessica, don't. Let's not make this a scene. A scene? You think I care about making a scene after that stunt? This is about respect, something you clearly have none of. I yanked my arm free and made for the exit. The weight of their stares was on my back. Stepping out into the night felt like breaking out of prison. My phone was blowing up. Alex, no doubt trying to do damage control. I ignored it, my mind made up. I drove back to their place, a storm of emotions brewing inside. How had things gone so sour? Alex and I were a team, or so I thought. But that dinner? It was a slap in the face, a wake-up call. I couldn't ignore it. Back at the house, I packed my bags in record time. Each folded shirt was a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just about leaving a place. It was about leaving a relationship that had shown its true colors. I turned off my phone, cutting off the barrage of messages. The silence was eerie but welcome. That night wasn't just the end of a disastrous dinner. It was the close of a chapter I had no interest in revisiting. After the disaster that was Judy's birthday dinner, I found myself driving to my parents' house. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. By the time I pulled up to their driveway, my decision was made. I needed sanctuary, yes, but more than that, I needed advice, something only my dad could offer. Walking into the house, the familiarity of it all was both comforting and jarring. Mom was asleep, but Dad was up, sitting in his study surrounded by papers that seemed less important the moment I stepped in. Jessica, what are you doing here at this hour? Is everything okay? He stood up, concern etching his face. I took a deep breath, the events of the evening pouring out of me in a flood. I told him about the dinner, about Alex and his parents, and how I felt like I'd been reduced to nothing but a source of income for them. Dad listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he sighed, a sound that carried years of experience and a hint of sorrow. Jessica, I saw this coming. I just hoped I was wrong, he finally said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. How could I have been so blind, Dad? I thought Alex, I thought we were different, I said, feeling the weight of my naivety. He walked over, putting an arm around my shoulders. You wanted to see the best in him, in them. There's no fault in that. But people show their true colors in tough times. It's a hard lesson, but an important one. I nodded, the reality of his words sinking in. But what do I do now? I can't go back there. You'll stay here for starters. As for the rest, we'll figure it out together, he assured me, his confidence a balm to my frayed nerves. Then he shared something that took me by surprise. You know, the company situation isn't as dire as it seems. We're actually on the verge of a breakthrough. It was a strategic move, a way to weed out the opportunists. I stared at him, stunned. So you mean to say we're not broke? He chuckled, a sound that was part relief, part amusement. Far from it. but it was important to see who would stick around when the chips were down. Unfortunately, Alex and his family showed their true selves. The revelation was a lot to process. My anger towards Alex and his parents was now mixed with a sense of vindication. They had revealed their true motives, and in doing so, had freed me from a future of manipulation and deceit. "Dad, I don't know whether to be relieved or furious," I admitted, the emotions battling inside me. "Be both. It's okay. But remember, this experience has taught you something invaluable about people and their intentions. Use it, learn from it," he advised, grounding me. Walking up to Judy and Martin's house, the next day felt like heading into the lion's den. I was ready for a showdown, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold reception I got. Alex was standing there, divorce papers in hand, with a look that could only be described as triumphant disdain. "Here you go. Let's get this over with," he said, practically shoving the papers at me. His parents were hovering behind, barely containing their glee, finally getting rid of the freeloader. Judy snickered and Martin nodded in agreement, a smug smile plastered across his face. Alex joined in. "Yes, turns out you're just an ordinary dummy without your daddy's money. Thought you'd cry, but guess what? We don't need a tearful mess around here." Their words stung, but not in the way they expected. I felt a bizarre mix of anger and liberation. I looked at the papers, then at them, and without a word, signed where I needed to. As I did, their smiles widened, thinking they'd won. But I had the last laugh. Pulling out a newspaper from my bag, I slapped it down on the table with more force than necessary. "Thought you might find this interesting," I said, my voice dripping with unrestrained satisfaction. The headline screamed about my dad's company making a monumental comeback, profits soaring higher than ever. Watching their faces drain of color was a sight I'd pay to see again. Judy and Martin's smugness vanished, replaced by shock, then desperation. Alex's arrogance crumbled, leaving him looking like a child who had just lost his favorite toy. Judy suddenly switched gears, stepping towards me with arms wide open. "Oh, my sweet girl. It's all a big misunderstanding. Let's have it out." Martin, ever the opportunist, chimed in. "Let's not rush things. Sit down, have a coffee, and we can talk this through." And Alex. Oh, Alex. He was the picture of regret. "I was wrong, okay. We can fix this. I want to make everything right, please." Their sudden change of heart was almost comical. Almost. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, hearty sound that felt cleansing. "You three are something else, you know that. But here's a newsflash for you. I'm done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, and the so-called family that only values me for my bank account." I turned to leave, their protests and pleas fading into the background. They called after me, a mix of desperation and disbelief in their voices, but I didn't look back. Not this time. After the spectacle at Judy and Martin's house, I was done, not just with them, but with the whole sorry saga that had become my life. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. So I took some time holed up at my folks' place, getting my head and heart back in the game. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was out for coffee with Sarah, my ever-supportive friend who had been there through it all. "Girl, you look like a weight's been lifted," she commented, sipping her latte. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You have no idea. It's like I can finally breathe again." Sarah leaned in, her expression turning serious. "So what's next for you, Jess? You've got a clean slate now." I thought about it, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I'm not sure, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll travel, pick up some of the charity work I had to put on hold. As for love," I paused, giving her a wry smile, "I think I'll give that a miss for a while." Just make sure you're doing what makes you happy, okay? You deserve it after all that drama, she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I'm grateful, Sarah. That is the strategy. My phone began ringing with Alex's calls and messages shortly after we spoke. He was begging that we start anew since he had changed. His parents also joined in, sending notes expressing regret and offering to have a conversation. I couldn't stop laughing as I sat in my room with my phone in hand. It was almost commendable, the sheer chutzpah. I had been thinking about my response for days when I finally typed it down. Alex, moving on means not going back to what broke you. It means moving ahead. Although I wish you well, this is the final point at which our paths will cross. Be careful. It was like finishing the last chapter of a book I had been reading for too long as I hit submit. I was suddenly prepared to begin composing a new one. The months that followed were a haze of activity. I pushed myself into my profession, volunteered assiduously, and even planned an alone trip to a destination I had long desired. For the first time in a long time, life was both full and rewarding. I discovered what I had been yearning for all along: peace one evening while sitting on a balcony with a view of a busy street in a distant city. It all felt like a faraway memory. The drama, the heartbreak, the treachery. A fresh message buzzed on my phone, but this time it came from an unfamiliar number. I reluctantly opened it. It came from a person I had met while traveling, someone who had equally made me laugh and ponder. Hi, Jessica. When you get back, how about dinner? Just wonderful company and food, no expectations. A smile slowly appeared on my face as I gazed at the letter. Perhaps it was time to let my heart open once more, but at my own speed and on my own terms. I responded back, yes, I'd like that, and sent it before I could change my mind. I was excited about what lay ahead as I gazed out at the city lights. I was no longer the same person I was with Alex and his family. I had moved on. I was more resilient, more sage, and prepared for whatever was ahead.